Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to another card making video. So today we've got the newest issue of Creative Stamping. This is issue 89 and we have got Stained Glass Christmas and the Stained Glass Sentiment. So this is an A4 stamp set along with two dies. So the two dies, I'm just going to show you here, you've got one of them which is the Sentiment, which is Happy Christmas. And then you've got a really lovely sort of stained glass effect die that's going to give you a really nice border. So this is two separate pieces. This will cut you an inner rectangle and then it will cut you that sort of stained glass frame as well. So looking at the stamp set, you've got the top right hand side is the Daisy May designs, and then the rest of them obviously are just sort of variation on stained glass windows. You've got some really lovely images in there, you've got some sentiments, you've got some bits and pieces to help decorate, you've got rectangles, you've got circles, so really good variety of stamps within this stamp set. So let's take a look at the magazine itself. So again, as always, loads and loads of inspiration. The one really great stamp, I think, is this one. You can see at the bottom how to stamp a circle frame. So it's giving you a quarter of a circle. If you were to, I would probably use a stamping platform myself, but it shows you how you could do it if you were just going to stamp it using an acrylic block, and then you can create a full circle with that stamp. So let's just have a look at a few more pages of inspiration in the magazine. As we know, especially in this Creative Stamping magazine, there are tons, lots of different styles. You've got this section here, which was to try something different. You've got really simple ones as well. Looking at what we get with next month's issue, this is Winter Stags, and I'm really excited about this stamp set. Actually, it comes with the stag and tree stencils as well, so that'll be really interesting to see what we can create using that set. So looking forward to receiving that one. The other thing they have got in this magazine is they've got 4 digital stamps which you can download. So that might be a video maybe later in the month that we'll take a look at printing and colouring those. But let's get into today's video. So I wanted to create something a little bit different today. So we're actually going to be creating 3 different tags. So these are tags that you could use whether it's on projects, on the cards itself, or whether you actually use them as tags for your Christmas presents. So I've got a couple of different packs of dies here that I'm going to use to create some tags. You can see I've got some paper here. So I didn't even realise I had this, to be honest. I found it. I was looking for a thicker craft paper because I really wanted to have some craft paper tags. They have got a pattern on the one side, but I'm really not too worried about that, to be honest. I'm just going to be die cutting the plain side. So I had a Tonic Studio set of dies, and I'm just using some, I think these are spellbinders, but I'm not 100% sure. They came from my nan, and these are basically just nesting shapes that I thought would make a really interesting tags. So I'm just going to die cut those. I've also got some plain cardstock and some other sort of textured, is it like a hammer cardstock, something like that, just something with a little bit of texture to it as well. So I did end up cutting, I believe it was 5 tags in total, but I actually only ended up making 3 for this video. So you can see that I've cut 2 of this really beautiful sort of fancy design, and again I've just used those regular nesting shapes because I thought they would make really fantastic tag shapes. So the first one I'm going to do is this sort of craft paper one. So you can see even just on a size like this, so many of these images will fit really beautifully on here, and I think you could create some really fabulous tags. And if you were to make sort of gift boxes, I have made a gift box previous with the last Creative Stamping magazine. You could make wrapping paper, so you could then make cards that match, you could have tags that match as well. So I think this is a really great versatile stamp set. So I'm going to be using my stamping platform to stamp these images because I want to get a really great impression, because I want to do some heat embossing of these images. So I'm going to be using my Versamark clear ink pad. So this is perfect for doing heat embossing because it's a really nice sticky ink pad. And I'm just going to be using some gold embossing powder. So you already see me there, prep the surface with the anti-static powder tool. That's just going to stop the embossing powder sticking to where we don't want it to be. And I'm just going to stamp this a couple of times. Like I said, when I'm doing some heat embossing, I do try to use my stamping platform. I do prefer to use it because it means that I can stamp it a couple of times and make sure that I get a really great image. So you can see there just sort of the outline of our stamps, which also would look really lovely just as a really sort of subtle look. Then it's almost like a watermark rather than sort of a heavy stamped image. So you can see I've poured over the gold embossing powder. I'm just going to heat set this with my heat tool, and I just think the gold and the really lovely shine on that gold embossing powder works really well on the craft paper. It is one of my favourite combinations. So with this particular die, what you've got just around all of that really beautiful detail along around the outside, you have got this tag shape. You can see that I'm just taping off this area because I'm going to do just a little bit of ink blending on the background, something really, really basic, but it gives you this really lovely tag shape area to kind of work in, and like I said, then you've got all that really beautiful detail around that. So I've just taken some Ranger Distress Oxide. This is a blueprint sketch. I really wanted to have a kind of dark night sky. Obviously, because I'm putting this Distress Oxide on top of some brown craft paper, it doesn't sort of give the intensity of that colour. I really wanted to have something a lot darker at the top, but I'm so happy with the kind of results that I got. So I still want you to be able to see that craft paper moving down. So I'm just doing a bit of a gradient coming down. I'm just trying to make it a little bit darker around the edges of this tag section. And I think this just looks really beautiful. So before we take off our purple tape, I'm just going to use some of this Cosmic Shimmer. This is a sort of mica powder that you can mix with water, and it creates some really beautiful paint splatters. So I'm just going to water this down, then I'm just going to get some on my paintbrush. You want it to be quite watery so you get that flicking motion. I'm just going to flick it off the side of an acrylic block, and that is just going to give a really beautiful shine to our background. Obviously, you want to let this dry. I didn't, and you can see that I'm sort of buffering off any colour that's on my gold embossing, so that did kind of smudge that just a little bit just above the stamped image of the Three Kings, but I still really love the way that this came out. And you can see, taking off this purple tape, you can see we've got that really beautiful design around the outside of the tag, and then we have got that really striking blue with that gold. I just think it looks really lovely. And to finish this off, because the die had that hole at the top, we're just going to pop some ribbon through, and then that is our first tag finish. So I really love how this has come out. I think this would also look really beautiful on a card. You don't have to, use it as an actual tag, but I really love just that gold embossing with that really dark blue onto that craft paper. So now let's move on to our next tag. So this is that sort of hammered paper, sort of textured paper I've got. I've again used quite a big nesting shape for this. So this is going to create a really lovely big tag, and you can see, so I really wanted a tag that was going to fit this sort of stained glass window of the trees. And I'm just going to stamp this again in some, this is the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. So this isn't actually a alcohol-proof ink pad, but I do end up using alcohol inks with it. But to get around that, all I did was just heat emboss this with some clear embossing powder. But I did have to stamp this just a couple of times. Again, another really great benefit of using the stamping platform, because it just means you can get a really fabulous overall image. And I think this stamp is a really great stamp to have. It's something quite basic, but I think you could still make it quite effective if you wanted to, make cards or make tags like this with the kids. You've got some really great big bold areas in here, and you could also, I think you could create some really good effects in this. I'm just going to use some alcohol markers to colour this in, something quite basic, but I wanted to have that kind of really striking stained glass window effect. But I think it's a really great overall image. You can see when I'm heat setting this now, I am going some from the front and from the back. This will just help prevent it warping too much. You don't want to keep it in one place for too long, just so you don't end up warping one particular area or even sort of burning your card or anything like that. So now, like I said, just using some alcohol markers. These are the TriBlend by Spectrum Noir markers. Again, not really doing anything too fancy. Stained glass windows normally, I think, just sort of solid colours. They don't have a lot of shading or anything, but obviously you could go as detailed or as basic as you want to. Here, I don't really do too much. I do a little bit of blending with the 3 shades. But yeah, nothing sort of too much. I don't think you have to sort of put too much into this. Again, because the image is quite basic, I don't think you need to be sort of too detailed about it itself. The other really great thing is by using that clear embossing powder, it's created those raised edges. It's going to give it a little bit of shine, and it's just going to help, stay in the lines a little better. It's not going to sort of bleed any of the colour mix of any of them together, nothing like that. So if you you know, want that little bit more security, you could try using clear embossing powder to heat set your image. And you can see I've just done around the border as well, and I've left the hills, so I wanted them to be like snow, and I just used a shimmer pen just to add a little bit of glitter onto those sections, and just added again another little bit of gold ribbon just to finish it off as a tag. So this is the last tag that we're going to make in this video. So this is again another shape. This is a slightly smaller one, and I really wanted to use one of these Daisy May design stamps. So I'm going to take this window. So there's loads of inspiration in the magazine itself where they're doing just a little bit of matte and layering, masking and layering of the images together. But I'm going to do something a little bit mixed media here. It doesn't quite turn out how I wanted it, how I had it in my head, but I still really love the sort of finished effect. I probably wouldn't use this as a tag on a present. I would possibly use this in a scrapbook or use it on an actual card itself. I think that would look really nice. So you can see that I've stamped our window. So this is a really sort of ornate window. I think it's really beautiful. And again, I'm just going to heat emboss this with some clear embossing powder. And this is because we're going to add some inks and a little bit of water and things. Even though this is a waterproof ink pad, this is the VersaFine Onyx Black. It's just going to help sort of protect that image. So now we've got that all finished, we're going to come in just with a glass mat just so we can get a little bit messy. I'm going to take my Prism watercolour ink pads. So I'm taking a combination of red and brown. I wasn't really 100% sure what to do, and I thought just try something a little bit different. So we had that red brick and the smoked paprika. Smoked paprika is a little bit more sort of reddy, a little bit mahogany, so I thought they would sort of work well together. So I didn't have my water spritzer, so I just got a paintbrush and literally just flicked some water down, and that meant as well that there wasn't loads of water because this isn't a waterproof cardstock. This is that sort of hammered cardstock again. I didn't want sort of too much ink because sometimes it can make the sort of cardstock go a little bit funny. I am drying this in between, but the one thing that if you can help just to let it dry naturally, that will be better, because the more heat you apply to this piece, because we've used that embossing powder, it's just going to keep melting the embossing powder. Sometimes it can get sticky again, and if you put your finger in it, you might get sort of your fingerprint in the embossing powder. So probably recommend, if you are going to put some heat on this again, is really try not to go over where you've done your heat embossing, and really just don't apply sort of too much. So that's our background, and I was really happy kind of where this was, but I wanted, again, just to make it a bit more interesting, add a little bit of a mixed media element to it. So we're going to layer up some of these stamps. So I'm just sort of working out which stamps I think would be sort of best on here. I was looking for a sentiment, but I do end up adding a sentiment just sort of so you can see bits and pieces of it. But again, I'm just going to take some of these colours, so some of the smoked paprika again, which we use in our background, and I'm just stamping off onto the glass mat before I'm going on to my project, just because I want to have a sort of light impression. And I'm going to be taking a few different kinds of images in here. So again, just kind of layering this up using some different colours. I do end up as well doing a little bit of ink blending around the edges, so it just kind of softens some of these as well. I liked where you still had the white piece, like the white sections of the background, so it did give it that kind of maybe like you've dropped it, gives it a bit of age, like you've got some water rings on it, things like that. So when I did then come in with the ink blending tool around the outside, it kind of filled in all those gaps, made it look a lot darker. So I wish I'd gone in a little bit more heavy-handed, but again, I still think the final result was still sort of good, and it still gave it that mixed media kind of effect. So you can see I'm just literally going sort of randomly over the top, and that's what I really love about some of these stamp sets, especially these big A4, is you get loads and loads of stamps, but you get lots of little stamps as well. So they're just those little flourishes, those little tiny elements, those details that can really sort of help make your cards or your projects a little bit more, just adds a little bit more in interest really. So you can see I'm just ink blending around the outside. So I did use the red, and then I did come in with a brown afterwards. I thought, oh, it looks too red. But it did end up then kind of hiding a few of those images. Like I said, I don't think it looks too bad, but I did quite like how it was sort of originally with that spots of sort of white bits. It made it look like that kind of watercoloured splattered background. But again, I still really love the way that this came out. So just to finish this one off, what I'm going to do again is just add some ribbons. This is just some sort of red satin ribbon just on the top, and that is going to finish this tag. Like I said, I wouldn't necessarily use this on a present or anything like that, but I think this would be really beautiful on the front of a card because it's quite busy. There's quite a lot in there. If you put that onto kind of a white card, I think that would look really beautiful. So here are our 3 finished tags, and they're all a little bit different shapes. We've got different sort of techniques and things in each of them, but this has all come from one stamp set, and that's what I really love again about these big A4 stamp sets, is you get such variety in here that you can create loads of different kinds of projects. So try something new. So obviously you don't have to just use these on cards. You know, you can use these in scrapbooks like we've done here, tags. I've created a box previously, creating sort of my own patterned paper. You know, you can create loads and loads of different things with these big A4 stamp sets. That's why I think these magazines are such great value for money. I think you get really great stamps that's going to build up your stash that you'll be able to pull out time and time again. So that's it for this video. If you did enjoy the video and you like the tags, then please give this video a big thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do so you don't miss out on any future videos. So thanks very much for watching and happy crafting.